So one other thing before we move on to the meeting, I see the para that Miles, that she said Miles cursed her. So I'm just not a parent who takes the word of grown people. Like, context matters to me. And so I was just like, well, can I have a word with you? And I said, well, what did he say? He said, fuck you. And the reason why that kind of got me is that, like, if he's now this one, I will, if he said, fuck you, he got that from somebody at school. Because in all the colorfulness of my language, if I ever tell you fuck you, I'm about to fight you. And in all of the things that you can say in honesty to me, if you ever tell me fuck you, in all seriousness, whatever the context of our relationship is over. Because those are fighting words to me. That's disrespect. And so now y'all are shifting the language from outbursts to disrespect. You see what's happening here? And so and it's important because this is going to get brought up in this meeting. And so I asked her, I said, you are an older lady. I said, and I am sure that you have grandchildren. I guess I'm trying to figure out why y'all tried so hard to get him to repeat his words and not just reprimand him. I said, did you need him to repeat it so you could send him to the office? Was him being sent to the office more important than correcting the behavior in the minute? We didn't get any further with that. I just wanted to have some clarity. So we go into the office, and the first thing we start talking about is suspensions. Like, I'm here, I've got all this documentation. I've got documentation of, dojo messages. I've got documentation of doctor's appointments where you can clearly see that as a parent, I'm doing everything I can to help my child. And right now, my biggest concern is I feel like my child is being antagonized. Like, that's what I didn't say that part out loud, but I felt like he was being antagonized because one thing about my kid is that once he understands what you're asking of him, a lot of times he's going to do exactly that. Like, it's like he has to make sure that he can fit it into the, autopilot programming. But once he puts it in the autopilot programming, he's going to do it the same way every single time. So we're sitting there, we're talking, and now all of a sudden they've got all these documentations on the table about how his academics are suffering because of his behavior. And it's the first time I'm hearing anything about academics. Okay. The very first time. And so they're like, he doesn't know his letter sounds. He doesn't know this. He doesn't know that. He absolutely knows his letter sounds because we go over them, and he was taught that at daycare. He knows about long A and short A. And now I'm asking, how is he being asked, or is he uncomfortable, with anything? And so, but we wait until this meeting to tell me anything. He doesn't know nonsensical words. Well, shit, neither do I. What is a nonsensical word? This is where they want them to start using like just letter and vowel and consonant combinations to show that you know how to sound out a word. That's fine, but I'm pretty sure there are plenty of 5-year-olds who don't know, nonsensical words. And so I started telling them, like, I just feel like y'all are just trying to bombard me with a whole lot of things to make me change my decision about Miles going to this school, and so she just kind of jumps into, we just can't tolerate this defiance. And we have more children in this school than just Miles. And I get that, because the word also was they had more children in that school that were fighting and cursing and everything else. And that my child, this was said to me, my child was being singled out. And so I'm trying to understand, why is the child of concerned, involved parents being singled out, So the advocate asked the question very plainly, what happens if Miles is suspended from here again? And she sits back and she goes, he'll be expelled from the magnet program. So here we have a 5-year-old kid who I know, not just because I'm his mom, but I know is a brilliant child, and we're going to expel him from an entire program. He has no chance of getting back into 2 months, less than 2 months into his school career. That wasn't acceptable to me as a parent. And so, we went back and forth about it, for a little while. And I just basically, I just wanted to air out my grievances, because I don't understand why a 5-year-old child is being treated like this. And so we kind of go back and forth, and we heated and all of this stuff. And, I finally just shut up, because I don't like circling mountains. And I looked at my dad and I asked my dad, I said, Daddy, you have anything that you want to say? And he says to them, he said, everybody in this room is defensive. Now, let me stop right here. Because, first of all, this is why I'm learning some of this stuff from scratch. Some things are generational, right? And so those generations didn't learn to advocate for their children the way we are. So there are some things about my process that I understand why my dad doesn't understand why I respond the way I do, you know. But if anybody in the room has the right to be defensive, it's me, because it's my kid. And so he looks at him and he said, the only person who's going to lose is Miles. And I 100% agree with that. And he looked at him and he was just kind of like, we're super defensive. And of course, my dad is a Baptist preacher. So all of this ain't godly. Y'all sit here and y'all talk about cussing being wrong and all this stuff. He's like, and I absolutely believe that cussing is wrong. But the way y'all are treating a 5-year-old child is wrong too. And I was just like, okay, all right. Yeah. We asked him to talk. And so now he's talking. And so I signed the paperwork, come to find out the lady that's over the committee we went to high school together. We talked for a few minutes. We signed the paperwork. I tell her what I already have in place. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to start screening, so now they can, get the speech therapist involved, and they can make sure that he's nice and healthy, and they can make sure that he hears well. And, we walk out. Well, we didn't walk out. The meeting was over, but then I asked to meet with the new teacher. So she brings the new teacher in, and I am going to use air quotations every time I say teacher until I get to the part of the story that explains it. But she brings a new teacher in, and the new teacher tells me, I am going to give him a blank slate. And while I know that she felt like that was kind of profound to say, I feel like a 5-year-old shouldn't have to be given a blank slate. A 5-year-old who you can see, who it has been determined, he is very impulsive. I'm going to give him, a blank slate. And I'm going to do my best to get through to him. And see, right here, this is what we came up with that day. This is what they call in a BIP, behavior intervention plan. And so we got that day, and that was given to her, to the teacher. And I'm expecting for this to be implemented so that we can see what's going on with the kid. So he goes to her class. He immediately likes her. I mean, let's just go ahead and say he's a loving and lovable kid. And so because he's a loving and lovable kid, he gets attached to anybody until they show him that he's mean. But he's also like what he and I are what they call HSP, so highly sensitive people, right? And so we get overstimulated easily, we're very emotional, and also like we're pretty intuitive too. And so like if something don't feel right about a person, it doesn't feel right, and I can't really get with you. And as a grown-up, I have the ability to control those impulses, and he doesn't always have the ability to control those impulses. Let's move to the next part.